Let's open up the Vintage Collection Woves Privateer figure from The Mandalorian. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. Today I'm adding another Mandalorian figure to my vintage collection. This one is Woves Privateer. This particular wave is very hard to find here in New Zealand at the moment. I spotted this one just a week or so ago and I had to snap it up. This one is the only one I've actually ever managed to find in the wild at a local toy store, and I was very excited to get my hands on it because sadly the very first version of Woves from the vintage collection line, I was never able to find that figure here in New Zealand. We seem to have skipped over that one, so sadly that one's still sitting on my have to source it from overseas list. So I was very excited to finally add Woves to my vintage collection because of course he appears in season 2 and season 3 of The Mandalorian. This one here, he is leader of the privateer forces as we see in season 3 of The Mandalorian. He is a featured character, so I really wanted to have him for my collection. So excited to finally get him. I really can't wait to open him up. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll take a closer look at the figure. We'll get him out, check out all of the details and accessories. But first, let's take one last look at the backing card. For this vintage collection card, we of course have the iconic backing card style, first pioneered by Kenner in the 70s and 80s. We have the Star Wars logo here at the top, surrounding the Mandalorian live action series logo in red, and we have a single chrome racetrack design surrounding the character print here to the side. The title for this character name is Woves in brackets Privateer. Of course, the first Woves figure was simply called Woves, and we have the same yellow color for the nameplate and behind the figure as the same as that first version as well. We can see that we've got a single figure with 3 accessories, a helmet, blaster pistol and jetpack packaged behind the figure, not on his back like some of the other Mandalorian figures. And we've got a nice clear promotional image of Woves from season 3 when he is leading the privateers. I think it's interesting they chose to picture him with his helmet off. He is a featured character and he does tend to wear his helmet off a lot. It's kind of a marked difference between the privateers versus Din Djarin's covert, who of course don't remove their helmets. I think that that's kind of interesting, but they were clearly trying to make it very different to the packing card art of the original version of the figure. On the back, we have that same bright yellow color. We can see that this is number VC315 Woves Privateer. We have a short bio here as well. A skilled warrior and privateer, Woves travels the galaxy as a Mandalorian mercenary. Not very spoilery, doesn't give us too much information, but it's still kind of fun to have a character blurb there. The main image here on the back is a picture of the front of the backing card, and most interestingly, quite a different pose here for the figure itself. We have Woves here posed on one knee with his helmet on and his hand holding his rangefinder. Usually they're kind of standing, not too interesting. I think this one's really quite different. Just kind of shows us some of the different poses that we can get with the articulation of the vintage collection line. I'll be very interested to see if I can actually get my figure into this pose. Sometimes these poses can be a little bit hard to replicate with the articulation, but we'll see. The vintage collection logo here, the rest of the backing card there is just copyright warning, barcode, all of that kind of stuff. Takes up a lot of space. I kind of wish it was a little bit smaller, but I can't really change that myself, can I? Now let's just talk a little bit quickly about the front of the card. There is a lot of discourse about the accuracy of each vintage collection figures. We're getting some fantastic figures from Hasbro these days, so it does come as a bit of a surprise to see just how inaccurate this figure is. So just looking at the figure right next to the card art here, I can see very clearly we have some differences. First, the color. There is a strong color difference between the chest armor and his vest. Here, there is less of a color difference, and looking a little bit closer, we can see that his season 3 armor cuts in a very straight line, almost a little bit more of a sort of a Django shape. It's a little bit more flat, and we've got this straight line there, and we've got sort of a colored panel of a fabric coming down at the front, and we have a lot of pouches on the belt. This figure we can see that we don't have that. We don't have the pouches on the belt, and the armor curves at the underside. So I'll just quickly grab another figure on hand that I have. This one here is Death Watch Mandalorian. This one is VC315. So when we compare these figures side by side, a little bit easier because they're both carded, we can see that Woves is pretty much a repaint of this figure. The original version of Woves, I don't own it, so I can't compare them side by side, but looking at images online while I was trying to browse and find this one for myself, I can see that for the most part, this one is essentially a complete repack. There is one difference. The original version of Woves came with a helmet that simply fit on over the top of his face sculpt, which generally fans like the swappable versions rather than the helmets that fit over the top for sort of accuracy, proportion reasons. This one has a swappable head, so we're going to pop his head off and put the helmet on, something that fans are very happy about. But if you already have that same version, essentially this one is buying it twice. From the neck down, he's going to be exactly the same. So one of those reasons why I haven't tracked down that first version, he's going to look very much the same. I think it's interesting that Hasbro decided to label this one as Privateer, which would usually denote that it is a different looking version of the character to his original version. But this Season 3 Privateer outfit, as they have labeled it Privateer, is in no way the figure that we have here, which I think is really odd. They could have just given him a different sort of a subtitle, you know, this is Season 2, maybe it's a different scene from Season 2, and use that swappable helmet as an excuse for reissuing this figure. Or why haven't they given us a new tooled version of Woves? We have fairly new and unique tooling on the Mandalorian Fleet Commander, which came out in the same wave, but he is a lesser known character. He doesn't even have a distinct name. He's simply known as Mandalorian Fleet Commander, but he has such unique armor. It was interesting that they would retool and sort of create a new figure for that character and just simply repack Woves without actually creating his unique and different Season 3 armor. But that's just a little bit of a curiosity. Because I don't own the original one, I was so very excited to get my hands on this one. Who knows, maybe I will like this one so much I don't feel as compelled to track down the original version, especially since the only main difference is the helmet, this one being swappable as opposed to wearing on over the top, and the backing card. And once I open this one up, the backing card is no longer sort of attached to it. So who knows, maybe I won't feel as motivated to track down that one, especially if it costs a bit more. I do wish we had a Season 3 specific version of Woves, and it's kind of interesting that we've now got two versions of Woves, which is simply a repaint of the Death Watch Mandalorian figure. But oh well. I'm still happy to be able to add more Mandalorian figures to my vintage collection because they are so prominently, and we see so many of them in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. So I'm very keen to build up my sort of forces of a Mandalorians for my vintage collection display. So enough chit chat about the figure and the sculpting and all of those sort of eccentricities with this figure. It's definitely time to get him off the backing card and check out all of those details for my very first time. Now I have the Woves figure and his 3 accessories off the packaging. We can go through all of the details. It's always exciting checking out a new figure, especially since I was never able to find the original version of this figure. So there's a lot to go over. So I'm going to start off with the facial likeness here. Man, we get some really cool effects with the sort of modern era of sculpting and digital printing. I really like the sort of the low level facial here that we have printed on here. The shading on that is really nice, just really quite fun. And of course, I think the likeness of this is pretty good to the actor as well. Really, really cool. Some of the faces we had back in the day, oh, they don't really stand up to the modern figures. Such a nice sculpt there. Really like those details. We've even got sort of the creases on the forehead and things like that. Really nice. I've got good paint here for the hair. It's textured. low line here. We've got a little bit of a seam line across the top like we often do. And we've got pretty good articulation. We can get some, expressions of different sort of angles for looking there as well. So definitely keen to, hopefully, fingers crossed, his head is going to be able to pop off well so we can swap that helmet shortly as well. Wow, okay. His torso moves very freely. That's kind of interesting. Some figures, it's quite a wrestle to kind of move them side by side, or they kind of want to snap back to sort of a center. This one kind of reminds me of the Mandalorian Fleet Commander. I can actually move him around. Oh, and the legs are actually quite movie as well. They move very freely. Some figures are really tight and you're sort of worried that something's gonna, I don't know, grip a little too much and possibly snap, because it is only plastic. I always get a little bit anxious if I find tight joins on my figures. Tight joins can be good because they will hold their poses. They won't soften and relax too much over time, but it does make me anxious when I'm trying to do some interesting posing and checking out the articulation. I really like the sort of the gloss finish on his armor plates here. Really does, because we know, of course, we see very clearly in the show Mandalorian armor being forged out of the Beskar. We know it's that kind of really tough sort of silver metallic material, and I just really like the sort of the gloss finish on his armor plate in particular. Just sort of really stands out with the paint used in other areas. The chest is more glossy than the thigh plates. There's just something about it that really stands out. I like it. Of course, the chest plate on Mandalorian armor is kind of the hero piece, the most sort of eye-catching stand-out piece there. And we've got some really nice silver weathering on here as well. All these little lines. We've got a different sort of iron heart here compared to other styles of Mandalorian armor. This one's just kind of a complete silver recess. We don't have a small piece in the middle. That's kind of fun and different. We've got that same dark green color, which is kind of fun, used on the shoulder pieces as well. We don't have any weathering on the shoulder pieces of this particular figure. No silver anywhere, just here, and nothing on those shoulder pieces there as well. We do, if I just quickly get his arms out of the way, we do have that silver weathering on the thigh pieces here as well. There is something about, I guess, the underlying texture of the thigh pieces. It doesn't look quite as glossy, but on this thigh piece in particular, I can see that we've got just a little bit of subtle sort of textured damage in the sculpting. So I think that that's possibly interfering and giving us a sort of a less glossier finish, because there's just a little bit more of a texture underneath it. This one looks very smooth, very nice. And I like that silver. Gosh, the weathering that we can get on some of these figures, I really like how fine and detailed. It looks like tiny little scratches. Very nice. And of course, we've got some vibrant blue pieces here as well, with these sort of gauntlets on his forearms and his knee armor pieces there as well. We've got black boots. We've got a little silver detail here on this side. There is a tiny little fleck of blue paint on the front of this right boot. Very minimal. We don't have a silver detail here on this boot. And of course, we've got black gloves here as well. We'll just get his arms out of the way, then we can take a closer look at his belt as well. So it is, oh, I can move it. I was wondering about that, because on some of the other figures that I've seen from like the Death Watch Mandalorian, which was a little easier to find, it looked like it could move. So this feels like it might be fixed in the back, but I can definitely kind of move it up and down. We can see that there is a seam line that it is kind of doing a pretty good job of hiding when it is worn straight. But as I mentioned earlier, it is such a shame that we don't have pouches going all the way along like we see in the character image on the backing card. It's always kind of funny that Hasbro knows that these figures are going to be packaged right alongside the art reference picture of these characters, and we can just see that they're not entirely accurate, considering that this is such a small accessory piece over top of the main sculpting. It's kind of funny that they chose not to give us an accurate belt. We've got a holster here hanging off the side. I do like the leather texture that Hasbro gets on their figures these days. Just gives us a little bit more of a subtle texture, makes it look less plastic, because of course it's not a soft goods, it is just plastic, but it's just nice because it does look like tiny little leather goods there. We don't have a hole or anything, it is closed at the end of that holster. The blaster pistol is very small and thin, so that should be able to fit in there no problem. We'll definitely test that out later. So we've got a pig hole here in the back to attach his jetpack. I'm always kind of curious why for some figures Hasbro packages it with the jetpack on their back and others where they have it down but packaged where we can see it separate to the figure. I'm always curious why they choose to package figures in different ways considering they are very, very similar. But yeah, we can see the sort of half circle shape, so the jetpack's not going to wiggle around. That looks like a pretty decent notch there. I'm hoping the jetpack will snap in there very well. Not as much going on the back of the figure. We don't have any sort of weathering. The back of the jumpsuit, the flight suit is very plain. We've got some interesting sort of replica stitch details here, replicating the stitching on the flight suit. Got a couple of little tiny flecks of blue. I can see them just showing up here with my eyes, but on the whole, pretty plain on the back. But Mandalorian costumes do tend to be a little bit more armored and interesting from the front because of course a lot of them do have a cape of sorts hanging down the back, and of course if you're wearing a jetpack you don't really want too much getting in the way of your jets from your jetpack as well. But yeah, interesting colors. Of course it's not exactly accurate to the privateers. They have a much more sort of blue finish, blue tones to their outfits, dark grays and blues. The green here isn't accurate to that season 3 appearance, but if we discount the backing card and just really want to get our hands on a season 2 version, perhaps you were like me, an international fan, and weren't able to find that original version. I believe it was an exclusive in the US. It didn't seem to make its way to New Zealand. I never found it, so maybe there are other fans like me that are very excited to get their hands on what is essentially the original version of Woves if we discount the privateer version. Who knows, maybe they will eventually give us a privateer Woves at some point in the future. We certainly do get several different versions of Din Djarin himself from the same season, even with the same outfit. This one comes with a slightly different weapon. This one comes with a bit of snow weathering. You know how it goes. We get a lot of different versions of the same characters. So fingers crossed we'll get a privateer Woves at some point in the future. So let's check out all of his articulation. I can already feel that this figure is going to be, I want to say, fairly flexible. So Mandalorian shoulder armor sometimes can impact the way that we can move the shoulders. So I'm just going to test because this looks, oh yeah, that kind of rubbed against it and I can kind of really giving that a bit of resistance, but with a bit of a click it snapped up and you can see it just kind of fits in there. So I can get his arm all the way up. Let's see if this one's going to do the same thing. Yep, just, oh, that's such a good fit. Just, I know I'm not really going to pose my figure in this way, but it's just nice to test out the range of motion, isn't it? So of course, standard kind of rotation there as well. Nice. It's holding its spot. The shoulder pieces are not separate. They are sculpted on the top. Sometimes we find they've kind of got like a little rubbery piece or they're separate so we can kind of move them and adjust them a little bit so we can move the arms around. These ones are fully sculpted on the arms. Now, of course, I've got to try and click them back down. There we go. Okay, let's get, oh, very tight. Oh, that's a very tight elbow. Oh, there we go. Okay, and let's go for the other side. Oh, very tight. Okay, tight elbows, but we get there eventually. And we can rotate them in. Of course, he doesn't come with a two-handed weapon, so I don't really need to be doing too much with his left arm, but we're going to be, of course, wanting to pose him holding his blaster or pistol very shortly. We can move the hands around, so we'll get some different angles. There we go. Looking pretty cool. And we can see that his right hand has a trigger finger, which should hold his blaster pistol very well. His left hand doesn't have an extended trigger finger, it's just more of a C grip. He doesn't come with an accessory to hold in his left hand. I do find you can't even sort of put the weapons in the left hand because that trigger finger really does affect the way that they can hold blaster accessories. So we tested out his torso. This guy can really move. That's really fluid and he doesn't snap back. He holds in position. So let's check out his legs. There's a little bit of a gap here. Quite a significant gap around at the top of the thighs. I can see all the way in to the peg attaching his thigh. And I don't know if that's my particular figure or this particular sculpt, because I don't have the original version to really compare to, and I haven't unboxed my Death Watch Mandalorian figure yet as well, so definitely going to check that one out as well. But because we've got a bit of a gap, I was suspecting we could get his legs pretty high up. This one, which seems to have a bit more of a gap, I can get that one all the way up. This one kind of wants to stop about here. There's something just impacting that, and I can just like, it'll sit like that, but he just kind of wants to drop his leg. It's not holding that spot, but he is very bendy in this position. So, and we've got very visible sort of articulation points here at the top of the thighs. Sometimes it's nice and subtle, like the thigh armor just covers that line. On this particular figure, it kind of hides with this piece, and this one is right on that line, so it's not really hiding it. I can see it, and you can see there's a little bit of a bigger gap than I've seen on some of my other figures. I can really see where that line is. It's not really hidden. And we can see that we've got the silver printing on the thigh. The silver printing does kind of stand out to me. It's not as bad on this dark gray, but I kind of wish it was, I don't know, sometimes I feel like it could be a little bit more towards the back of the inner thigh as opposed to being sort of so towards the front there. Let's test out the knees. Standing up, I can just see the start of the articulation point with the knees. And of course, we can see them a lot more clearly when we actually bend them. The grey hinges are kind of hiding in amongst the grey of his flight suit. They are shiny, they do stand out. But overall, I don't think that's too bad. And we can see this is about as tight. Oh, no, we get a little bit more. There we go. That's about as tight as I can get him pointing forward at the hips. But I can get his knees in quite tight, which is quite nice. So if we had a cockpit, I really want more things to interact with my figures. I want blurgs and banthas and more starships and things like that, so I can put my figures in different poses. But here we go. We have him in a seated position. That doesn't look too bad. You can see I've got a little bit of a wonky boot here. It's just like got a little bit more of a gap between sort of that ankle and the heel. I'll probably be able to sort of adjust that and get that into position. I do find the ankle points on some of these TVC figures, they feel like I'm working with just a tiny bit of plastic. It does always make me a little bit worried when they are tight. These ones thankfully are not too tight. I don't feel like I'm going to break them, but yes, they definitely needed a little bit of adjustment off the backing card. Nice little click there to it. They want to sort of hold a position, but yes. Overall, I think he's actually one of the more articulation friendly figures. His elbows were tight, but I get the feeling once I move them around a little bit, they'll be about as flexible as the rest of him. He's almost a little bit too flexible. I kind of want to keep tweaking his positioning, but yeah, really fun. Okay, let's take a quick look at his jetpack. So we've got this really vibrant blue, which is the same color as his forearm armor. Kind of interesting that his forearm armor doesn't have any kind of additional paintwork. It is just that straight blue, no weathering, no buttons or any kind of silver detailing there as well. I forgot to mention that earlier. But his jetpack, in that same matching vibrant blue, does have a lot of silver detailing here. It's giving me very Django vibes, isn't it? The sort of blue and silver color scheme here. We have sculpted in little exhaust points here that are kind of angled slightly off to the sides, which is nice, not straight down. We've got some silver points. Of course, the top sort of rocket part is a bit shorter than Boba Fett's one. And we've got that attachment point there in the back. It's not hollow. We've kind of got this flat base in there. And we can see that it has a few multi-parts that are all attached. Nice and clean from the front. We know that these sort of rocket sort of engine parts here on the side are separate because we can see where they're joined together, but it gives a very nice clean look here on the front. Nice tidy silver paint. No weathering, but I do like the way that that silver really highlights the details there. So it's definitely going to give him a blue color once we get this on. Okay, it snaps on very securely. I don't feel like that's going to pop off. Of course, he doesn't come with a cape or anything to get in the way, but that feels nice and secure, and he definitely has much more of a stronger blue color now that we're getting his accessories on. So I'm going to do his blaster pistol next. So these Mandalorian blaster pistols are so skinny, it's like almost two-dimensional. It just looks like a tiny little stick from the top, and down the side. This one is dark grey with just a little bit of silver on the grip and along the base here. And we have just a little sort of circular cutout there for the trigger guard. Hoping this will be very easy to put into his hand. It's very flat and we've got that extended finger. This shouldn't be too hard at all to get into position. It just kind of slots in there and fits on his finger very nicely. Very, very easy. It kind of seems funny. We often think about those sort of lines of, you know, I'm a Mandalorian, weapons are my religion. And then these Mandalorians come with such tiny little weapons. It's just kind of funny. You expect them to have sort of like a whole arsenal of, you know, vibro blades in their boots and all sorts of, you know, weapons and things like that. But yeah, it comes out of his hand really easily. So let's just quickly test it in that holster. I'm expecting it to go in fairly easily. Oh, there's actually a bit of resistance there. Okay, let's push that in. Oh, bit stiff, but I can get that in there. It looks nice. We've certainly had a big step up in terms of accessory scale. When I think of some of those rather oversized weapons with Hasbro action figures of old, they never would have fit into a realistically proportioned holster. Of course, the weapons are very small, but they are appropriately scaled and they fit into holsters very nicely. So I'm just going to leave that one in there for now. We'll probably do some posing with his blaster very shortly. But first, let's get his helmet out because, of course, this is the main difference between this privateer, quote-unquote privateer version of Woves and the original version. So, of course, his helmet is going to look the same, but this one is a swappable helmet. We can see that we have a sculpting sort of style here on the inside that is designed to fit over the ball joint attachment of the head pieces rather than being a hollow sort of rubbery helmet that's going to fit over the face. So of course the main sort of pro for this style of helmet is it gives a better proportion. It's also not squishy so it doesn't misshape, and so that we get a little bit of a closer helmet proportion to the figure, especially if they have any amount of raised hair. It really does make a bit more of a bobble-headed appearance because the sculpting for this one doesn't have to take into account the size or hair or head or anything on the inside. It's just simply going to snap on over the peg. We've got some really fun paint details here. It's predominantly blue. We've got a grey stripe running around the sort of top dome part. It is very imperceptibly a little bit off level on my particular figure, a little bit higher on this side than compared to this side, but I was never able to find the first version of this Woves. I was not going to leave the only version of the privateer figure that I've ever spotted on the store shelf. Maybe if I ever find another one of these in the wild, if there is a restock, I might be able to grab a second one. But I don't mind it being completely off center because you know what? I'm eyeing up whether I'm actually going to put this helmet on display or whether he's going to sort of hold it in his hands because I really do like the face sculpt for this particular figure. I get the feeling I'm going to make him hold it. And so that line is going to be, you know, he's going to be holding it. It's not really going to be standing out to me. I like the silver weathering on the dark grey paint job around the black gloss visor. Those really fine little silver scratches, they look really cool. We've got a rangefinder here on the side. We have a sort of a metallic paint on the main stick of the rangefinder. The top is blue and it can articulate down. We can actually sort of spin it all the way back as well. Of course, we saw on the back of the backing card, we had it posed like that and he had his hand up by it. Definitely keen to see if I can replicate that pose. We've got a little bit of silver running around the back and of course that grey sort of stripe around there at the back. All very cool, pretty standard for Mandalorian helmets. I haven't lined up all of my little 3.75 inch Mandalorian helmets to see if we are essentially getting the same sculpt over and over. I wouldn't be surprised if this has been reused elsewhere, but yes. Now let's see how easy it is to swap this off. I recently opened up the Mandalorian Fleet Commander and for the life of me, I could not get the head to pop off the attachment stick. So I'm really hoping that this one's going to be easier. I really hope that that one was just a fluke and was just fighting with me. So let's have a go. So oh, there we go. There goes his head. This one came off. Yay. Okay, that one, I was ready to really fight that one and it actually came off easier than I thought. Okay, phew, I almost lost it there. So let's pop the helmet on and hopefully this one's going to pop on easy. Okay, I think that's on. Oh, don't want to bend your rangefinder. There we go. Wow, okay. I really had a fight with that Mandalorian Fleet Commander. That was my main thing that I was just, I didn't like about that figure. Because I was thinking about the Boba Fett deluxe one that came with the Stormtrooper helmets. Each helmet came with a peg. And I think it's interesting that when we have these swappable pieces, that each piece doesn't come with its own peg, which means that, you know, if you're really fighting, I just couldn't swap that helmet on, because every time I pull the head off, the peg would come with the head and I couldn't get it out. But yes, oh, he does look cool. Oh, now I don't know. Do I really, I think now that I've got the helmet on, I might be buying this figure twice. It's one of those ones, sometimes the helmets look, it just really gives a whole different vibe to the figure. And suddenly I'm like, yeah. I thought with this head sculpt that I might be displaying him with his head on holding his helmet, but you know what? It's really hard to beat the iconic Mandalorian helmet. Just looks really cool. And it really gives a really fun balance of blue color to the outfit. Just as he was packaged, there's a lot of dark grays and this green, but I definitely think he looks really cool now that we've got this balance of blue with the forearms, the knees, the jetpack, and the helmet. That looks really, really cool. Okay, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that knee pose that we saw on the back of the backing card. Might have a play around and see if I can do that later on, but let's see if I can just get this blaster pistol out. Is it going to be stuck in there? Oh, there we go. Okay. And we'll put it in his hand, and then we'll just check out some of that articulation now that he's all kitted out. Okay. So his ankles are going to take a little bit of tweaking, but in some ways, I guess that's good. Definitely spent a bit of time getting him into a standing pose. He's fighting with me a little bit. But overall, I think this is really cool. I know this figure in particular is going to be disappointing for fans that bought the original version. It's always a little bit interesting when we get a very, very similar figure in terms of the tooling and the paintwork compared to one that has already come out. You know, we didn't have years between these two versions of Woves, considering that once you've got his helmet on, he looks pretty much identical. It's interesting that basically the only difference between this and the first version is that swappable helmet as opposed to a helmet that is put on over the head sculpt, which I know that is something that fans like, but that will be disappointing if you are a collector on a budget and already own the first one. If the swappable helmet thing is something that you really look for, you may want to end up getting this one as well. For me, now that I've actually got this figure out, I'm kind of tempted to get a second one, you know, that sort of very different, you know, look with the helmet on versus the facial sculpt. When there are so many Mandalorians on screen, we don't yet have a really good sort of mix and match army builder for the privateers and Din Djarin's covert. So sometimes just having a couple of Mandalorians like this to kind of flesh out a background scene, you know, if I put him in the background, he's kind of going to look a little bit more like a generic Mandalorian as opposed to when I put his helmet on. Whether or not I can actually find a second one locally, that's another question. So I'm left with the decision of, am I ever going to track down that original exclusive version that never came to New Zealand? When I think about the loose figure, because I do generally open my vintage collection figures, the only thing unique about that one, realistically speaking, in terms of the loose figure, is the backing card and the fact that they have a different number. So do I really want to pay international shipping and customs and taxes for a cardboard piece with a different number to what I really own? I'm definitely going to have to think long and hard about that one. The collector in me does really like to check off each VC number from my spreadsheet, but when the budget only stretches so far, I don't know that it's necessarily going to worth it for me. Different question for Americans, where you can find these much more easily and you don't need to pay for international shipping. That definitely does complicate the decision for international fans, but overall, I think he's really cool. He is a named character. He does appear in multiple episodes of The Mandalorian. I definitely wanted to add him to my collection. Some really fun aspects to it. I do think it is weird that Hasbro packaged this as the Privateer Season 3 version when it clearly isn't, and I think that that's going to be another sticking point for fans, especially if you own the original version, because this is pretty much the original version from Season 2. So yeah, it's definitely going to come down to your personal circumstances, whether you own the original one and whether you are a big fan of the swappable helmets, whether that is a big enough difference for you to, you know, really want to track this one down. Hopefully for fans everywhere, this one is going to be easier to find than that first version. I think it's really cool. Still lots of Mandos I'm trying to track down to add to my Mandalorian series display of vintage collection figures. Very happy to have this one for my collection. I think it's really fun. Definitely some really cool details, and yeah, I'm kind of fingers crossed hoping to find another one so I can build up my Mandalorian force for my display. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and had a lot of fun checking out all of the details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a TVC fan, I recently opened up the Mandalorian Fleet Commander figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.